I was scrolling on Amazon like I normally do when I had a random thought. What would be the cheapest graphics card that I could buy off of Amazon? So there's a couple requirements that we're obviously going to have to put because Amazon has thousands of listings and some of them technically aren't even graphics cards. They're just display adapters so that you can connect another monitor. So we can't do that. So the requirements we have to go to is it has to be, for the most part, a name brand graphics card, as well as having at least a minimum of 1 GB of VRAM. With those requirements, I mean, it is low, and I am expecting to get a pretty cheap graphics card, but I mean, it's brand new. I mean, what is the cheapest brand new graphics card on Amazon? Let's look at what I got. Now in this box is a graphics card that I just paid a little over $17 for. This is an RX 540 1 GB version. It was released in early 2017, and there's actually not much information about this card online. This seems to be a pretty weird card where they only made mobile versions and OEM versions, and so finding this version online to see like the performance and whatnot was very hard, and I wasn't even able to find anything to put in the video for you guys. But what I can do is show you the Amazon listing which I purchased it from. As you can see at the time of recording, this graphics card was only $15.99, which was on sale, and that was a really good deal, honestly. I mean, any new graphics card for less than 20 bucks is honestly a steal. Do you know what else is a steal? The ability to join my brand new Discord server. If you're wanting to communicate with me and other computer enthusiasts, join the new Discord server in the link in the description. Enjoy the video. Now, in order to make sure that this graphics card can be pushed to its highest potential, I'm actually going to be putting this into my personal PC. The specs of this PC is an i7-6700, 16 gigabytes of RAM, and I'll be making sure to download the games onto an SSD. But now that it's installed in the computer, let's download some drivers. And luckily, downloading the drivers went perfectly fine as well. The only issue that I had was the white screen was looking yellowish or like off-white. You can tell just from this clip that it's looking weird. And the issue didn't go away until I physically went into the AMD software and turned on color correction, which for whatever reason was not on. As you can see, turning it off makes everything a bit more yellow, and it's really noticeable now that I turned it on, but luckily it's working. Let's move on to some games. The first game that we have up is Fallout 4 running at 720p with a mixture of low to medium settings, and I have TAA running. This ran an average of 44 FPS, which is really playable and honestly better than the original Xbox One, which did release at pretty much the same settings. With only a minimum of 30 FPS as well, makes this a really playable experience, and technically it is playable at 1080p with the average being down to 30 FPS, but that minimum being pushed down to 16 or 17. The next game that we have up is Fortnite Reload, running at 1080p, performance mode, and I did have to set it to 75% 3D resolution. This did give us an average of 98 FPS with a minimum of 33. Obviously jumping out of the bus is going to be a bit more intensive than it would be if we're on the ground. But even on the ground, there's still some times where it's massive stutters, and I mean, with a minimum of 33 FPS, I mean, it can't be that playable, especially if you're wanting to do competitive. In the normal Battle Royale, it also does get less frames, which is something that you really want to look at, because most people will be playing the main Battle Royale mode once this reload mode is gone. Now we're going to be looking at GTA 5, which is running at 720p low settings, and I did have to turn the DirectX shaders down to DX10 instead of 11 just so it would fit under the 1 GB mark. These low settings does make the game look a little worse, but I mean, it is playable. We're getting an average of 48 FPS with only a minimum of 40. That is pretty smooth. I mean, I don't know what more you could really ask for. We're maxing out at 65, which is really good. I mean, it's not high enough to where it's stuttering really bad, and I mean, it was overall a really good, smooth experience. Now, Minecraft is going to be one of the games that won't be pushing this card to its highest potential. This game averages 157 FPS and nearly maxes out the 180 FPS cap that I put on it originally. With only a minimum of 85 when you're loading new chunks, I mean, this is not a bad experience. If you're playing survival mode, this would be a very good experience. I mean, it's the latest version of Minecraft. If you were to turn the settings from fast to fancy, I would recommend turning down the render distance, but even then, I mean, it's still a very playable experience. The last game that we're going to be testing today is Rocket League, running at 1080p performance mode. Now we're getting an average of 51 FPS, which is pretty playable, but Rocket League is a pretty competitive game, and I mean, you're really wanting that minimum to be really high. And with my minimum of 17, this really makes it not that playable. I know that minimum is mostly during the replays as well as the explosions for the goals, but I mean, there's still a decent amount of lag playing, and it caused me to miss the ball multiple times. Overall, I'd compare this to like the Nintendo Switch version of Rocket League.
But that's not the only thing we're going to do today. We're also going to overclock this GPU. Now, I've never overclocked before, so I've done a lot of research, and I'm going to take it slow to see what the best overclock would be without damaging this graphics card, because I'd want to set it back to normal and use this for another video or something, so just got to be safe with it and hopefully not break it.
And after about an hour or two of overclocking and benchmarking, I was able to raise the memory clock from 1183 MHz to 1286, and the core clock from 1500 MHz to 1756. But first, today's message.
Thanks to all of you guys, I now have access to have channel memberships on this YouTube channel. There's 3 tiers, I3, I5, and I7, all with their respected costs. Every tier shares all of its perks, which I think is the most fair as of right now. With being this small at this point, there's not enough that I could offer to justify making exclusive tiers that have their own perks. In my eyes, the best solution would be for everyone to have the same amount of perks, no matter how you choose to support me. You can click down below to find more information and to see what the perks are. Not only will you have access to being a member on YouTube, you'll also be able to have a special role and member-only channel in my new Discord server. So if you want to support me, click down below. I can't thank you enough.
Coming back to Fallout 4 running at 720p low to medium settings with TAA, now overclocked, we're getting 51 FPS on average. Oh, and did I mention that I did turn the textures up to high as well? Which is the reason why the minimum is 23, but with that increase of performance, I mean, we're almost hitting 60 nearly all the time. I mean, that is amazing to hear, and that is something that this game really needed. I mean, you might even be able to push it up to 1080p with no problems now. Fortnite Reload now gets an average of 106 FPS, but that minimum did drop a couple more frames down to 29. I did cap the FPS at 120 for both of these settings. I know I should have said that earlier, but I felt like anything higher would have led to even more stutters, and I really just wanted to minimize the amount of stutters I had. When I was in buildings or inside, it was completely okay, but just in big areas where a lot of people were fighting, I did see a lot of the dips, and I mean, that's really important when it comes to Fortnite, especially if you're playing the normal Battle Royale mode. Now, GTA 5 might have been the game that had the most performance out of it. We are averaging 58 FPS with only a minimum of 48, which, by the way, was the average in our last test. That is just insane. This is a very smooth experience, and I mean, I don't see why you wouldn't play this. This is exactly like the console versions nowadays. Now, turning it up to 1080p might honestly be a very playable experience. I believe that it should keep up above 60. I believe that it should keep up above 30 FPS. Now, even with the same settings, Minecraft only got an average of 163 FPS. That is more than likely because of my 180 cap that I have limited, but the minimum did drop down to 72, which means that the higher performance is causing a bit more stuttering, which is something that you don't really want, especially if you're trying to play online but no matter how you play, I mean, it's still going to be a playable experience no matter what. This time around, Rocket League gave me an average of 57 FPS with a minimum of 14. That minimum was not very often. It was more playable than the last time around. I still noticed a bit of stuttering, and I mean, it would be really nice to not have to play this in performance mode, but I'm glad it just runs.
I think this graphics card honestly did pretty well. This was my first time really overclocking something and seeing like how I could push it and really seeing improvements more than like a couple frames. So this is really cool. I really liked this experience. Should you get this graphics card? No. I mean, for $15, like how I got it on sale, it was pretty good. I mean, I can't complain. It was better than my 2GB card that I had in my last PC, which is the hated GT 730. So, I'm glad it did well. I was technically able to play the games that I normally play, just lowering the settings a good amount, which is okay. I have no issues playing at 720p. I expect to play newer AAA games at 720p because, I mean, my current graphics card is only a 1050 Ti. Like, I'll still be using this card until it's no longer useful, but those newer games, newer AAA games, it's a little too much for it. So yeah, I understand having to push down the settings to 720p low settings. Yeah, overall I think it did well, and I think it was just fun. That was the biggest thing of it. It was just fun to put a different graphics card in my computer for the first time and test some of my games out with it. That's all I have for you guys. If you guys liked this video, hit the like button down below and subscribe if you're new. I'll see you guys next week. See ya.